Min-jun walked along the rocky beach, his pockets empty and his stomach growling. The sky was grey, just like his hopes. He had lost his fishing job last week, and now he didn't know how he would feed himself. The cold wind bit at his face as he kicked small stones into the angry sea, wishing for a miracle. "Be careful what you wish for near these waters, young man," said a raspy voice behind him. Min-jun turned to see an old man with a weathered face and milky eyes. The old man leaned on a twisted wooden cane carved with strange symbols that looked like waves and fish. "The sea holds secrets that should stay hidden," he warned, his voice trembling. Min-jun laughed, but something about the old man made his skin crawl. "What secrets?" "Fish and seaweed," he joked, trying to hide his unease. The old man didn't smile. Instead, he grabbed Min-jun's wrist with surprising strength, his fingers cold and wet like a fish just pulled from the water. "On nights when the moon is full and sits low on the water, they come," the old man whispered. Beautiful beyond words, with voices that could make a man's heart stop. They promise riches, gold and happiness, but their gifts come with a price that no man should pay. The old man let go of Min-jun's wrist and pointed to the horizon where the moon would rise later. Min-jun rubbed his wrist and nodded politely, thinking the old man was just another crazy villager with too many sea stories. He said goodbye and continued walking, already forgetting the warning. What he didn't see was the old man pulling up his sleeve, revealing skin that shimmered with tiny blue scales in the fading light, before disappearing between the rocks. That night, Min-jun couldn't sleep. His tiny house by the sea felt colder than usual, and his empty stomach wouldn't let him rest. He got up and looked out the window at the full moon hanging low over the water, remembering the old man's words. "Ridiculous," he muttered. But something pulled him toward the beach. Maybe a late-night walk would help him sleep. The sand felt cool under his bare feet as Min-jun walked along the shore. The moonlight created a silver path on the water that seemed to invite him. Then he heard it, a soft, sweet song drifting over the waves. The melody wrapped around him like warm hands, making him forget his hunger and worries. Before he knew what he was doing, Min-jun was wading into the water. The singing grew louder, and then he saw her rising from the waves. Her long black hair flowed around her like seaweed, and her skin glowed with a pearl-like light. Where legs should have been, a powerful tail of green and silver scales swished beneath the water's surface. Her eyes, dark as the deepest ocean, fixed on Min-jun's, and he couldn't look away, even if he wanted to. "I am Haewon, Queen of the Eastern Sea," she said, her voice like the sweetest honey. "I have watched you, Min-jun. I know your troubles, your empty pockets, your hungry nights." She moved closer, the water barely rippling around her. "I can change all that. I can give you more gold than you can imagine, enough to live like a king for the rest of your days." Min-jun found his voice, though it trembled. "What do you want in return?" he asked, already knowing he would agree to anything. Haewon smiled, showing teeth that seemed too sharp, too numerous. "Just one night with me," she whispered, reaching out a hand that was webbed between the fingers. "One night, and all the riches of the sea will be yours." Min-jun took her hand without hesitation, feeling something cold and slippery wrap around his wrist as she pulled him deeper into the water. Min-jun expected to drown as Haewon pulled him under the waves, but strangely, he could breathe. The water felt like thick air in his lungs, uncomfortable but not deadly. They swam down into the darkness until lights began to appear below them. An entire city spread out on the ocean floor, buildings made of coral and pearl, glowing with an inner light that turned the water around them into a rainbow. "This is my kingdom," Haewon said, her voice clear despite being underwater. "Few humans have ever seen it." She led him to a palace made of giant shells and sparkling stones. Inside, other merpeople swam about, some with tails of blue, others with tails of red or gold. They all bowed to Haewon but looked at Min-jun with cold, hungry eyes that made him shiver despite himself. A servant brought them to a large room where a bed of soft seaweed waited. Gold coins and jewels were piled high around the room, more wealth than Min-jun had ever seen. "All this will be yours," Haewon promised, running her webbed fingers through his floating hair. "After our night together." Min-jun nodded eagerly, already imagining how he would spend his new fortune. But as Haewon came closer, her beautiful face changed. Her eyes grew larger, darker, her mouth widened, showing rows of needle-sharp teeth. Her lovely hands now ended in claws that dug into Min-jun's arms. He tried to scream but couldn't make a sound underwater. "Don't be afraid," she hissed, sounding nothing like the sweet voice from before. "The first bite is the most painful, but then you'll start to change." Just as she lunged for his neck, the room exploded in a blast of bubbles. A group of men with spears burst in, wearing strange suits that let them breathe underwater. Their leader was a young man who looked oddly familiar. "Get away from my brother!" he shouted. Min-jun felt confusion wash over him. He didn't have a brother. Or did he? His memories suddenly felt foggy and wrong, like someone had mixed them up and put them back in the wrong order. The rescuers grabbed Min-jun and swam rapidly toward the surface, fighting off mer-people who seemed to appear from every shadow. Min-jun's head spun with questions and fear. When they finally broke through to the air, he gasped and coughed up seawater. They dragged him onto a boat waiting nearby and sped away from the shore, the angry screeches of the mer-people fading behind them. "Who are you? What's happening?" Min-jun demanded once he could speak. The young man who had called him brother removed his diving mask. "I'm Ji-ho," he said. "And you're not Min-jun. Your real name is Tai-woo. You went missing 3 months ago while investigating the disappearances around this coast." He showed Min-jun a photo on his phone, a picture of both of them in police uniforms, smiling. Memories began flooding back like a broken dam. Tai-woo, not Min-jun, remembered his real life, his job as a detective, his brother, who was his partner on the force. They did something to my mind," he whispered, horrified. Ji-ho nodded grimly. "The mer-people feed on human memories before they feed on their flesh. They make you forget who you are, give you new memories, then slowly consume you." An older man joined them, and Tai-woo recognized him as the old man from the beach. But now he looked younger, stronger. "I'm Detective Park," he said. "I've been undercover for a year, investigating the mer-people. They got me once, but I escaped before the transformation was complete." He pulled up his sleeve to show scales growing on his arm. "I don't have much time left before I become one of them." "But why did they target me?" Tai-woo asked, still trying to sort real memories from fake ones. Detective Park's face darkened. "Because you were getting too close to the truth. The mer-people aren't just killing random people. They've made a deal with someone powerful, someone who's been giving them specific targets, people who know too much about the illegal dealings happening in this area." Back at police headquarters, Tai-woo studied the evidence board they had assembled. Pictures of missing people, maps of the underwater city, and at the center, a photo of Sung-ho Kim, the town's mayor and wealthy businessman. "He's been working with them for years," Ji-ho explained, "feeding his enemies to the mer-people in exchange for gold and pearls from the sea." But something didn't feel right to Tai-woo. He touched his neck, feeling tiny bumps forming under his skin. "I think I'm changing," he admitted to his brother. "But I can still hear her. Haewon. She's calling me back." Ji-ho grabbed his shoulders. "Fight it. We're close to ending this. The mayor doesn't know we've figured out his connection." That night, Tai-woo slipped out while everyone slept. He couldn't fight the pull anymore. It was like a hook in his mind, reeling him back to the sea. But he wasn't going empty-handed. He carried with him specially designed underwater explosives, enough to destroy the palace and the mer-people's breeding grounds. If he was going to turn into one of them, he would make sure they couldn't hurt anyone else. The water welcomed him like an old friend as he swam down to the underwater city. His body was changing faster now, webs growing between his fingers, gills forming on his neck. Haewon waited for him at the palace entrance, her beautiful face hiding the monster beneath. "I knew you would return," she purred. "They always do." Tai-woo smiled back, playing along as she led him inside to the grand hall where hundreds of mer-people had gathered. "Before I join you forever," Tai-woo said, "I brought a gift." He opened his bag, revealing not explosives, but dozens of mirrors. The mer-people hissed and backed away, not from fear, but from shock at seeing their true forms. In the mirrors, they didn't see beautiful creatures, but twisted, deformed beings, with rotting flesh and empty eye sockets. "This is what you really are," Tae-woo said, as police divers burst in from all sides, Mayor Kim in handcuffs among them. The mayor had been a merman all along, using a human disguise. The real monster wasn't the mermaid queen, it was the human greed for power and wealth that had let these creatures into their world. As Tae-woo felt his humanity slipping away, he made peace with his new role, a bridge between two worlds, making sure neither would threaten the other again.